All right. So hi, Ava. It's so nice to see you. Is it Eva or Ava?
Ava, it's Ava,
Ava.
yeah.
It's funny because I teach high school English and I have a student that spells it EVA, but she pronounces it Ava, like AVA. So
Yeah.
I always have to ask, and I always default to my student. But Eva, it's so nice to have you on. So let's just kind of dive right in here. So what was your relationship to food and body like when you were a kid?
Yeah, so for me, it has been a really like it has been a journey for sure. I think one of my first really, like, when I was really aware of like my relationship with my food, especially, was it was something really delicious and I loved it. But quite soon I realized that it's something that you should be aware of. It's something that you should kind of look after and just see, like you have to be careful of what you're eating and how you're eating it and how much you're eating it. So for me, that was definitely something that I was very aware of very early on, especially with my body. I think it kind of like related to my body because I remember ever since I was little, I was just very concerned about my thighs, and that was one of my biggest insecurities as well. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand with food and with body, and it definitely was like a love hate relationship. I knew that I love it and it tastes amazing and it nourishes me, but at the same time, you have to be kind of like aware of it and beware if you're doing it too much, or whatever that means, to a kid. I had my own definitions of it, but yeah, that's pretty much how it was.
It's so interesting that you said your thighs were kind of like your target issue body part, because for me it was always like my midsection of my stomach, so it's always and I never think about my thighs, so it's so interesting to see how like the body part that I don't think twice about is somebody else's fixation and vice versa. So that's it's interesting to hear. Now, did anybody talk to you about food and body growing up? Was there anybody who was a bigger influence on you with regard to the messages you were getting?
For me, it was definitely my mom. I know now, obviously, that I done so much work and so much healing, that was her best intentions, and that was her insecurities kind of like coming through. And but it's definitely was. I was in track and field, so I done sports my whole life, and obviously, there is this perception of how your body should look when you are doing track and field, and when you are running and jumping and sprinting. So I think majority of her viewpoint was coming from a concern, so make sure I don't gain the weight so I can perform. But it does definitely, she had a really big influence on me at the time, and it was definitely something that I had to work through a lot. So I was always I wouldn't say a bigger kid, but I was always a very muscular, very yeah, I was never just like skin and bone skinny. And it was all, that was something that none of my family were. They were all way skinnier than I was. So I think that's where the contrast was coming in as well, because I was, a lot of times, I was made fun of as the fat one of my family. So even though like I was, far from it, but even if I was, it was just, yeah, it was just that's something that happened. And I think my mom kind of wanted me to not become even, just wanted me to stay in a weight that I was and not gain it because of the fear, of hitting puberty. Obviously girls gain weight when they hit puberty, and and also on the other hand, performing well for my track and field and for my sports. So yeah, I definitely had a lot of influence from her, and kind of seeing how much, kind of seeing through the years how much she shaped my relationship with food for sure.
Sure. Yeah. So you have, your influence from your mom and her baggage, which I have something similar with my mom and her diet culture, which came from my grandmother. So there's a generational thing happening, and then the whole this is the ideal track and field physique, and
Mm.
this comparison. You see everybody else in your family, and you're like, well, even though your body was fine, but why don't I look like everybody else? Type of question. So I can totally see how that would all kind of come together. And then there's always the societal and cultural part of it. Now I'm in the States, so you're from Slovenia.
Yeah.
What I'm not very familiar with how prevalent or not prevalent disordered eating is there. So can you tell us a little bit like what it's like there? What's the ideal body type? What kind of diets are trending? What goes on over there?
Yeah, it's so funny because I spent 6 years in US, so
Okay.
I kind of have like best of both worlds, I would say. But yeah, definitely with me, I think it's a bit different for me, but because I was in sports so much, and I think disordered eating was even more, it was more present in sports, but it was also more tolerated because there was like a bigger goal behind it. So in sports, I think you can really easily masquerade the whole thing, and I think it can really easily become something greater. We're doing it for a purpose, and a lot of times it can be overlooked. So that's definitely something that was going on with me. Like there's definitely coaches that I had around me that haven't really handled my food issues, or even just my body correctly, or just uh, compassionately, actually, to just begin with. So and I think that was definitely something that comes with sports, and we're always taught, especially like to kind of push through, just no pain no gain, especially in sports. And it definitely reflect on that. And I never actually thought I had as big of an issue as I was having until I was like removed from diet culture, and I was starting to heal, and was starting to get influenced by all these positive role models. And then I realized, looking back, I was like, oh my goodness, that was so messed up. My relationship with food was so messed up. So yeah, but with the whole so I would say it's quite so different in Slovenia than it is in US. I think it's definitely very popular to be fit and toned, and just be into fitness. And this idea of, if you're not working out, like you're just lazy. It's kind of like the same thing, I would say. I think it's just a lot of it's just not as, I always try to find the right word, but yeah, it's just a lot of that mindset going on. There's not quite that many diets going on, is at least not in a culture that I'm in and in sports. But there is definitely, having that toned muscular body, and which is an ideal body. So that's definitely something that's really prone. That is really popular to hear. So yeah.
So not necessarily like that any one type of diet is very popular, but there's this ideal physique that everybody's striving toward.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that, because I was never like a traditional athlete. I did dance and cheer, but I didn't do track and field. I didn't do any like team sports per se. I mean, cheerleading, that's a debate for another day whether cheerleading's a sport. But
Mhm.
anyway, um, I'm assuming as an athlete, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that it's not like the goal isn't to be as skinny as possible and to be, as you said, skin and bones, because you need to have the stamina and the strength to do your sport. So, talk to me a little bit about what exactly the goals are for an athlete and what type of disordered behaviors might come along with that as an athlete.
Yeah, it's so funny that, like you said, like I think it definitely depends on, for especially, I can talk obviously for track and field. It really depends on which event you're in. So when I was talking about being skin and bones and being really skinny, it was usually, it applied to long distance running, and that's where what my parents and my sister at the time did. So it was really interesting to see, and that was one of the desired body type that you should achieve, because as little as you have on your body, the faster and the longer you can run. So that was basically the whole idea, which is quite outdated at the moment. But yeah, definitely, it really depends on an event that you are in. But I do remember going from trying to be as skinny as I can to then kind of moving to, I kind of like a diet culture move through it, but moving to that skinny to the toned ideal. So I was, I for me, it really started being problematic when I came to States, where I gained the freshman 15 that everybody was talking about. And for me, it was gaining actually 10 pounds of muscles, but it didn't matter. I gained 10 pounds of muscles in the first semester, but that didn't matter, because when I saw that number on the scale, I was horrified. And I was in the best shape of my life. I was so strong, fast, just so athletic, but it didn't matter because that number on the scale defined my whole worth. And uh, for it was just it's just so crazy. Like thinking back, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm so heavy, I won't be able to perform. But it never came, like it was never about that, because I was performing the best in my life. It was definitely just, pure diet culture. And, you can have that. And that's why I was talking about the danger of kind of putting, oh, I need to lose weight to like a nicer packaging and a nicer purpose, if you would. So yeah, that's definitely something that was really present with me. And then I was just trying to, lose weight to look more toned, because I didn't need that fat on my body, even though you definitely do. You definitely do. If you're gaining that many muscles, you also are going to gain fat with it. That's just, it's just completely normal. And at the same time, like at the time I was a thrower, which usually throwers have a bigger physique, because they need a lot of strength and a lot of explosiveness to, throw an implement. So, but I was, even though I was doing that discipline, or I was doing that event, I was just so like, I was looking down on the throwers, because I was like, oh, they're way less athletic than I am. They're way, fatter, like just less athletic, I think, in general. And it's so, just the fat phobia within it. And I thought, again, it was because, it was all about the performance. It was all about, me being just more athletic. But when in actuality, it wasn't about that at all. They were all amazing athletes. They were all super strong, super fast, super explosive. But just because they didn't have the physique that I was striving for, I took them as less of an athlete. So I can only touch on, track and field, and how and also my experience with it and how I perceived it. But obviously there's obviously people who had way healthier, thank goodness, relationship with their sport and their food and their body. But that was definitely my experience. And, I'm so grateful that done track and field. It gave me so many opportunities. Like I was able to go to US on a full scholarship. I was just, traveling around the world. But it definitely, it did came with a lot of struggles as well. So yeah.
Sure. But thank you for sharing that. So now, you're in track and field, you're in the best shape of your life, but you're really not happy with the number and with your body. Um, at what point does this change? At what point do you find intuitive eating?
So it actually changed after I was done with track and field, which is kind of sad, because I have gotten to the mental point where I couldn't continue anymore. I couldn't continue performing and competing anymore. So I was already out of college, actually way out of college. It was probably like 2 years out of college. And I was still in that. I stopped training professionally, but I was still in that off and on diet mentality, where I would, really restrict for a couple of weeks. And then obviously my body would make up for it and with binges and, just the screw that mentality and just eat whatever I want. So yeah, definitely that was just kind of going on in the cycle of, just trying to be on a diet and then not being on a diet, and, just my weight fluctuating so much. And it happened, it was so crazy. I don't know if you're familiar with these challenges when, you get money for losing the most weight. Like that, I was in one of those no, I was not in one of those challenges. I was in probably like 5 of those challenges. And it was one of the fifth, or I don't even, maybe it was more, I don't even know. But it was one of those challenges, and I was just, in the middle of it, and I was just like, it's just, I was just like, had this question. I was like, am I really going to be doing this for the rest of my life? Like, this is exhausting. Like, it is so exhausting. I can't enjoy food properly. Like, I can't enjoy working out, even though I love working out. And it was just this question that actually changed everything. And I was like, I really don't want to do this anymore, but I also want this body, this ideal, at the same time. And I was just so confused. I didn't know, how to even start, but I knew that what I was doing was not working anymore at all, because it was just something that it just wasn't working. It was draining and exhausting. And I think a lot of, your listeners can relate as well. And, you probably as well. And it's just that, it was just that breaking point. And for me, it was that doing, one of these challenges that I spent so much money on already. So that was like that epiphany, that moment of, okay, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. I think a lot of my listeners and your audience as well, they're in this in between phase where they're like, well, I
Yeah.
can't do this for the rest of my life because I'm miserable, but I don't know what else to do because I want this body. So
Yeah.
they're in the middle and it's so hard. You said that you had some really great resources that helped you heal. So what were they? What are some resources, some people that our listeners and our audience members can follow to try to heal?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I would say read as much as you can about intuitive eating and, body neutrality, body acceptance, because that's one of the main tools that it helped me, because I had to replace all the crap that I've learned from diet culture, all the misinformation that we've been taught, because I would literally go and, take every article on the internet as a sacred article. As long as it helped me lose weight, it was like pure science to me, even though I knew it wasn't. But, so replacing these negative beliefs, negative mindsets, and negative just knowledge that you had about your body and food, with intuitive eating, seeing how it actually works, health at every size. So that's definitely something that is can always be a really good tool to come back on and to fall back on when you are having these doubts and not knowing where to go and what to do. Is definitely a good thing and a good resource to have, to always go back and prove yourself right, that you are on the right path, that you are doing what you can. So that's definitely one of the main ones that I would say. And then for sure, just allowing yourself to feel. And for me, being an emotional eater was definitely one of the biggest drives of my eating disorder, because I wasn't allowing myself to feel. I wasn't allowing myself to actually be with myself. And having this resource to, whether it's journaling or meditation or whatever the tool is that it works for a certain individual, that can be such a powerful tool to let yourself get to know yourself as well, beyond the diet culture, beyond who you are. Because I feel like when we are trapped in the diet culture, we are just so like our view is just so narrowed down. Like we are not, we're all we care about is basically like food, or like how our body looks like, and maybe stuff like here and there related to that. Like for me, I know that was the case. I was in a complete brain fog. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So yeah, that's definitely another thing that will free up so much of your mental space and will help you actually find out what you actually want and how you actually want to live your life. Because it's just it's so crazy to see, and to see the effects that diet culture has on us. But it also, once you let go, it just frees up so much space and so much, yeah, there's just so much more to life than just trying to lose weight. And yeah, and then definitely, surround yourself with role models that that are proving you that improving your relationship with food and body is possible, and is, such as yourself and your amazing podcast, and all the other podcasts out there, or Instagrams, or whatever, whatever platform you're on, surround yourself with that. And body diversity, so you can see that no, this is not the only body that you want to do, and that is out there, or this is not the only ideal body. There's so many more bodies out there, and they're all, they're all acceptable, and they're all, thriving and living their best lives. So yeah, so those would be like kind of like my main go-to things for the beginners. I don't want to like overwhelm anyone with like like too many resources.
Sure, sure. I think you said two really important things. And the first was I was where you were in terms of like, I would scour the internet for hours, like reading all these health articles and do this for this effect and like do
Mm,
intermittent fasting and try the
yeah.
celery juice. And it's like, and it's really hard because I'm also a journalism teacher in high school. And, I teach the kids news literacy, and you have to know what a reputable source is and what isn't. The problem is with diet culture is a lot of like experts are producing all this like fat phobic diet culture type stuff. It's like not to crap all over mindbodygreen.com. I don't know if you know them, but they'll always have an article where it's like I'm a functional dietitian and this is the celery juice, recipe that changed my life. And it's like, ugh, like it's not good. So it's really hard to separate, diet culture from not diet culture when we're having experts in the field
Yeah.
tell it out. So that's hard.
Yeah.
And then I also struggled with this. I was always the thin fit one. Like that was always part of my identity.
Mm,
When I had my eating disorders, I felt like I had to keep that up or people would be disappointed in me.
yeah.
That was something that, perpetuated it. And it turns out like I'm like genetically, like my family, like we're just smaller people. So like my body didn't change, but my mind changed. Like I don't feel
Mm,
this pressure to be that person. But when I did, it was all consuming. Like you said, can't even really think of anything else.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
now, so you find intuitive eating wonderful, yay. And then you start to dump that diet. So can you talk to us about why you started your Instagram?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I just, for the whole reason why I actually started, I was like, I have all this knowledge, I have all this, resource that I can share with people. How can I make, how can I change someone's life? Like, and all the other Instagram, influencers changed mine with intuitive eating. And, because that's actually where I first found it. It was just a random post on Instagram. And I was like, oh, let me see what that is. And that's how I started to kind of like follow one person and then the other person. So, I was like, okay, if they can stumble upon me and, I can provide them with resources where to go and how to do it. It's definitely, something that I would love to do that and, kind of help as many girls as I can out of the misery that I was in and to help, as many girls to never have to feel the way I felt in my lowest and in the midst of my eating disorder. So that's kind of how it all started. And that I always had this little kind of like a nudge of, oh, maybe you should, go into counseling. And I have a bachelor's in psychology, and I never really felt that connected with it. I just kind of did it, and I was just like, oh, like I guess I have this degree now. But now, for some, and I guess it was a good like a subconscious thing. But now it just I kept getting these nudges, and oh, maybe you should, kind of explore that some more. And so yeah, that's kind of how I started coaching, because I was like, okay, like why not? Like I have this, I have the resources, I have the knowledge, I have the, the degree to do so. And, and that's how, that's kind of how it all formed. And I know that a lot of, clients that I work with now, they go to these professionals, and a lot of them focus a lot either on nutrition when you tell them that, you have some issues with food, which a lot of like clients are trying to get away from. They're trying to get away from being fixated on food, or sadly a lot of professionals are also not properly trained on eating disorders, and especially like, eating disorders such as binge eating or yeah, or bulimia. There, I think there's so much focus on anorexia because it is such a deadly disease. But I think when it comes to the others are, they're not as, or just disordered eating in general, they're not as well trained. So I was, that's where I was like, what, like I can actually, find space for myself in this profession and help as many women as I can, and help them to food freedom and body acceptance. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started. I can't believe when I first started, it wasn't even like a thought that I would be, helping women and coaching them. But now, then I was just kind of, I love how, it's like seeing things evolve. And yeah, that's how the whole story happened.
That's so awesome. Two more questions. First, what is one actionable tip that listeners can take away from you today? Like, what's one really specific actionable strategy they could start their healing journey with?
I would definitely say when it comes to our mind, like I think we can do so much with our mindset. And I love, using that strategy when we have these these thoughts that are really either they're just guilt or just shaming ourselves, or just a negative thought that's popping up around our food and body. I think it's such a powerful way to shift the mindset. I love to call it, it's from one of the books. I think her name is Gabby I don't know what her name is, but she's the one who I read it from. And she said, just choose another thought. Like, so choose again. So like, let's say the thought, like for me, for my thighs, it was, oh, I hate my thighs. And then I was like, okay, then you take that thought, you accept it. And that's a lot of times what we do. We kind of try to, like, I think when we are in the midst of trying to heal, it's like we shove these negative thoughts away. It's like, oh, I shouldn't be thinking that. Oh, I shouldn't be doing that. But actually, stay with the thought. Like, why is this, like, why is this thought coming up? And, see and explore it, what's going on, whether you journal it or just do it in your head. It's so, so important that we know the origin of what's like propelling the thought to like come up. What are the triggers that are causing it? Why did you now feel that, your thighs are big, or, whatever that might be for you. So, kind of exploring that and seeing where it's coming from. If you can identify the triggers, or, the emotions behind it, how is it making you feel? Because a lot of times, when we get to the root of it, it's so much easier then to kind of be aware of it and seeing and just identifying the triggers. So like once we do that, and maybe the first time you would have no idea where it's coming from. You will just be like, oh, it just makes me feel horrible. That's good enough. You're identifying the feeling and you're staying with it. Like, that's awareness in itself, and you can go deeper and deeper with it as you go. And then once you kind of identify that and acknowledge that, try to find something else. What is something that will make you feel better? What is something that you can choose to believe now? So I'm not saying about, if you hate your thighs, obviously you're not going to go, oh, I love my thighs now. Like suddenly you're going to love your thighs. No, that's not the goal. We're trying to be realistic. And also it's super overwhelming when we think, like, when we go from, here to woo over there, like we can't just, but let's take like the next little step. Maybe it's, okay, like today I don't despise my thighs. Today I tolerate them. It's a little step that you can take, and it's so much less overwhelming than going straight to love. But at the same time, it will give you some acceptance, and it will feel way more attainable, and having that little step instead of taking a leap. So that's one of the things that you can reframe your mindset, especially when these negative thoughts are popping up. And definitely, always, you're coming such a long way, and just give yourself lots and lots of self-compassion around that. And I'm all about reframing your mindset around food and body. So that's definitely, that helped me tremendously, and that's number one tip that I would say, to start there.
Awesome. I think that's so important. That's great that you said that. Now, last one is, in what I ask all my guests, this one sentence: what does it mean to be finally free to you?
It just, honestly, like there's so much. I'm like, oh my god, it means all these things, but just to be myself finally, and to be yeah, basically to be myself. Like, I can fully live how I want to live, and not have not have that dictate by something else, or someone else, just such as diet culture. So that's definitely, I found my purpose, I found my passion, after I quit the diets, and heal my eating disorder. And it's just the best feeling knowing that I can help women on the same journey now. So definitely, and I feel more myself than I ever had in the midst of my eating disorder and being trapped in diet culture. So definitely freedom of being myself. Yeah.
That's so great. Eva, it was so nice to have you. Thank you so much for taking time out. And I love how Zoom can just connect us. Like we're like we're
Yeah.
like half a world away, and we're here talking and seeing each other in real time. And it's just so wonderful. Thank you again so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on. And I had such a blast chatting with you, and about my journey and about food freedom. So yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you.